Hey, my name's Leckie, and this is Coast Watch Football, where we talk all things A-League, and here is the season review for Melbourne City, the reigning champions from last season in the A-League. Could they do it once again, win the championship? They came so close. But once again, a fantastic season overall for Melbourne City. When you look at the points tally and the goals that they scored and everything, they actually had the exact same points tally as last season. Goal difference was just down a touch. But still, near perfect campaign, when you look at Melbourne City and how they performed this season. One of the big talking points heading into this campaign for City was the arrival of Matt Leckie, a big signing, the Socceroo returning to Australia. And, everyone was looking at that front three for Melbourne City. Jamie McLaren, the Golden Boot winner from previous years. Andrew Naboot, who we know how good Naboot can be on his day. And Matt Leckie, it's a pretty terrifying front three. And it was quite interesting. Especially when you look at Leckie, for the first few months, and it was one of the big talking points for the first few rounds of the season. He really wasn't performing. He didn't look like he'd settled in at all. He just didn't look like himself. And then it was probably after the COVID break, maybe January, February, where he really clicked into gear, started scoring some goals, chipping in, with some assists here and there, and combining more effectively with his strike partners. When you look at elsewhere on the field, in midfield, I think this season they were probably challenged a little bit more with injuries. Aidan O'Neill missed the last part of the season. I know Connor Metcalf missed a couple games here and there. Florian Berenguer had a fantastic season, but they were having to rotate things around with Roston Griffiths coming in, Taras Gamorka. But Patrick Kisnorb, I think, overall did a good job of managing his side. And, City aren't a team that generally change their system or personnel all that much. But I think Paddy Kisnorb did a good job of, as I mentioned, managing his side when he needed to. When you look at that back line there, bringing Carl Jenkinson, that was one of the big changes in that back line. And I think that worked. He looked really solid in the A-League and settled in really quickly. Curtis Good, Nuno Reis, the central defenders had a great season as well. And we saw some good youngsters, get some game time. And Jordan Boss, for me, was superb in some of the games that he featured in. Looks like a really exciting left-sided player, potentially to replace maybe Scott Jamieson if he decides to retire in the coming years. And he was even playing further up as in a left-wing position as well. When you look at some of the other actually young players, players like Stefan Kolakowski probably didn't get as much game time as he would have hoped this season. There are rumours of him being, linked to a move to another A-League club, which I think would be a good move for him. Mike Attilio, of course, contributed more often than not off the bench, but he had a decent season as well. When you look at some of the overseas signings, though, that's where it's really perplexing. And the first one, Manuel Pacciarelli, that we were excited to see how he would fit into this this high performing City lineup. Where was he going to fit into the side? How could you fit him into the midfield? And that was the question when they signed him. And it turns out they didn't fit him in at all. It's so bizarre when you look back. Pacciarelli, I think he got some minutes in the FFA Cup, but barely got any game time for Melbourne City. And I'm not sure whether there's stuff going on behind the scenes, but it's quite rare for an A-League club to bring in a player, from overseas and bring him in, and you think that there's a designated role for him to play, but Patrick Kisnorbo just decided not to use him. Similar thing also for mid-season signing Sabasa Endo, another midfielder who got some game time here and there, a little bit in the Champions League as well, but again, didn't really have too much of an impact on the side. It was all about the guys who were sort of starting. Again, as I mentioned, City, a side that don't really change up personnel all that much, so but of course it was working for Melbourne City for much of the campaign. They were demolishing sides. I think they scored 6 goals against Wellington Phoenix towards the end of the season as well. They were once again, for me, probably the most consistent and strongest side in the competition, and it shows. They obviously won the premiership in the end. When you look at the Champions League campaign, that was an interesting one. Everyone excited to see how Melbourne City would go in the Asian Champions League. And look, they came so close. They did so well. They really, really did so well, especially when you can contrast it, to how Sydney FC went. City did really, really well in their first Champions League campaign and just missed out on that final hurdle. But I think it'll be interesting to see how they go next year now, knowing that they got so close. They'll accept nothing less than qualifying through to the next round for next season's Champions League, I reckon. Patrick Kisnorbo will be disappointed his side didn't get there in the end. When they came back, they obviously had that loss against Perth Glory, that 2-0 loss away to Perth, which was quite a surprising result, and then just got the premiership in that home win against Wellington Phoenix. final series was quite interesting for City. Obviously, that 0-0 with Adelaide, and then in the second leg, you remember Adelaide scored first in that home leg at Melbourne City's home ground, Amy Park, and that was quite interesting. Honestly, I remember watching that game and I thought, oh my, like City might slip here. Adelaide were looking the goods, but obviously, I mean, they have got the big players to turn up, and they did indeed turn up in the end there, making it through to the grand final. And then, I've done my grand final preview earlier on the channel, which you can check out as well. But City just didn't quite show up, and Western were just far too strong for them, far too organised, and City unable to break them down. And I'm wondering, look, a lot of people, I think, despite that disappointing performance in the grand final, City still, it shouldn't overshadow their season. I mean, City, once again, just like incredible this season. To have 2 consecutive seasons almost hitting 50 points in the A-League. I mean, once again, the second consecutive premiership, 3rd consecutive grand final now for Melbourne City. This is a very, very good side. And I'm sure they'll be up towards the top of the table once again next season. What do you guys make of Melbourne City? And my question for you guys is, do you think they will finish in top position once again next year? I mean, when you look at some of the other sides coming up now, Victory were very strong. Western, obviously the champions. Do you reckon they could pip Melbourne City off top spot? Can Melbourne City maintain that dominance in the A-League when it comes to the league, at least the premiership? It'll be quite interesting to see what happens next year. But overall, really solid campaign for Melbourne City. Congratulations to them for winning the premiership. So close to that championship. Guys, hit like on the video if you have enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.